Today I'm going to show you how to cut out some stringers, how to lay them out and cut them. First thing you need to do is have a landing that is relatively level and the right distance from the deck or the porch that you're working on. So I knew in advance that I was going to have 4 steps, the 5th step being the deck. So I wanted at least a foot of the bottom step to be on the pad. So I set the pad at 3 feet off the front of the deck. The important thing we have to do is find out what the distance is from the deck down to the landing. So if you take a level and a tape measure, and we're right at 32.5 inches. So we need to divide that by 5. There's going to be 4 steps, but the 5th step is actually the deck. Alright, so you divide 32.5 by 5, it comes out to 6.5. So our risers on our stringers are going to be 6.5, which is 6.5 inches. We're going to use 2 deck boards for the treads. So that comes out to close to 11.5 inches. We're going to use 11.5 as our tread and 6.5 as our riser. So what you need to lay it out with is a square, a carpenter square, and they make these little attachments that you can clamp on the square that you can buy. It costs you, $5 or something. But what I like to do is I'll take a piece of wood that's straight and I'll set it up at 6.5 and 11.5. So we put this at 11.5, and I drilled some holes in this square and 6.5. Okay, so that represents the step tread and the rise. 6.5 by 11.5. Alright, so we're going to start. The very top step doesn't have a rise because the riser is the front of the deck. So the very first step is going to be a tread coming down from the top. Alright, so right here is the first step down, coming down from the top. So we're 11.5 inches. We want to square this down from the top. Okay, so that's the first step down. And then you want to go 3 more. Alright, so that's the bottom step. So this is the very top, this is the top, and then you go up 1 to the deck, and then you're down, so 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the bottom step. So we got to square it down to where it sits on the landing. So we put the square on here at the end of the step and square it down. Okay, so the bottom step is not going to be 6.5 because you're going to add 1 inch to the step. So your bottom step needs to be at 5.5 inches. Square this back. This is what sits on the landing. Alright, so you're going to add this to the top of the step, first step. So 5.5 here, 1 inch here makes 6.5. So at the top, you also have to allow for if you're going to put a front on the step. So we're going to add a 3/4 inch front to the step. So to do that, we need to subtract 3/4 off the back. We're going to back this off 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so that allows for the 3/4 of an inch that you're going to add. So if you have your 2 deck boards on here, and that's the back of the step, and you're going to add a 3/4 to the front, that's how it's going to sit. So this particular application, the mounting board is set back in 1.5 inches, so we have to allow for that 1.5 inches. So what we're going to do is come over here and we're going to measure down 6.5. Well, it's 6.5 to the first step stringer. It's going to be 7.5. So that leaves us with a 3/4 of an inch of an offset, and then it goes back 1.5 inches. So we got to cut that profile out on our stringer. So it's a 3/4 inch down, 1.5 inches back. This is what mounts to the porch. So we got to come down 3/4 of an inch, and then we got to come out 1.5 inches. So there's the 3/4. And there's the 1.5 inches. If you got lines that you don't want to cut, mark them out so you don't get confused. Like, these are not lines that you're going to cut on, or erase them altogether. Alright, so there it is. That's the layout of the stringers. Alright, so we're going to cut this out, and then we're going to test it and make sure it's all right. And then once we get it tested, we're going to use that one pattern to mark all the other stringers. So let's get this cut out. Alright, we got the stringer cut out, and we want to make sure the steps are level, and it looks good. Alright, the next thing we want to check is that this is at 7.5 inches. And it is, it's right on 7.5. And that the bottom one is at 5.5. And it is at 5.5, exactly. So once you put the deck boards on top here, and you put a 1x4 on the front, that's what it's going to look like. You added the 1 inch to the top, and it made it 6.5 on your top step. So the same thing at the bottom. You're adding 1 inch to the bottom. You allowed for the 1 inch by cutting it 1 inch short, and you end up with 6.5. So when you cut these out and you lay them out, you have to allow for the front, and you have to allow for the bottom step. We're going to cut out 4 of those. We're going to use that one as a pattern and cut them all exactly the same, and hopefully we'll have a good looking set of steps. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope it helps.